For over 40 years, he lived in absolute luxury, but blind and lost in darkness, until a mute child lit a candle and awakened something he'd never felt before: light. From that moment on, an unexplainable connection began to transform not just his sight, but his entire life. The London sky wore a grey hue that autumn morning. Roderick Travers, 42, CEO of Travers Tech, one of the Western world's largest assistive technology companies, was finishing another exhaustive meeting with his directors. The office on the top floor of the imposing building on Regent Street buzzed with the sound of computers, telephones and side conversations, but for Roderick, the world was composed only of sounds, textures, and aromas. Born with a rare genetic condition that affected his ocular development, Roderick had never known colors, shapes, or faces. His reality was a constant darkness, but this did not prevent him from building a technological empire dedicated to improving the lives of people with various disabilities. The Londoner had transformed his own limitation into fuel for innovation, creating applications, devices, and software that revolutionized accessibility in the country. "Mr. Travers, the car is waiting," announced Cecilia, his personal assistant for over a decade. As she entered the room with light steps he recognized perfectly. "Thank you, Cecilia, but I'm not going home just yet today," Roderick replied, running a hand through the graying hair at his temples. "I need some time alone." "But sir, traffic is chaotic and rain is forecast." "It wouldn't be prudent." Roderick raised a hand in a gentle gesture, interrupting her. In recent months, a feeling of emptiness had consumed him, despite his professional achievements, his billionaire fortune, and his innovation awards. Loneliness accompanied him like a constant shadow, even more intense since the end of his last relationship 2 years ago. "Just a few hours, Cecilia. I need to feel the city." The assistant knew that tone well. She knew that when Roderick made a decision, he rarely went back on it. Reluctantly, she accompanied him to the elevator, reiterating recommendations he already knew by heart. For the first time in years, Roderick left the building without his special cane, equipped with sensors he himself had helped develop. He wanted to feel vulnerable. He wanted to experience the world without the protections he had built around himself. The metropolis's hum enveloped him like a wave, and he walked slowly along the pavement, guiding himself by sound and memory. The wind blew harder, bringing with it the first drops of rain. Roderick's steps became hesitant. He was determined to cross the street when the deafening blare of a horn paralyzed him. A taxi braked abruptly inches from him, and the driver shouted something that was lost in the urban chaos. It was in that moment of disorientation that Roderick felt it. A small hand took his. There were no words, just a firm touch that pulled him away from danger. The hand was small, childlike, but guided him with surprising certainty through the crowd. Roderick allowed himself to be led, intrigued by that unexpected contact. After a few minutes of walking, the sounds of the city diminished. The aroma of wet earth and vegetation indicated they were in some park or square. The rain increased, but there was shelter. They were probably under some covered structure. "Who are you?" Roderick asked, turning in the direction where he supposed his mysterious guide to be. There was no verbal response, only the sound of something being struck. A match, perhaps. And then a new aroma, candle wax. The silence was broken only by the gentle crackle of the flame. Roderick felt the approach of warmth near his face, not threatening but gentle. And then something extraordinary happened. Where before only absolute darkness existed, a point appeared. Tiny, trembling but undeniably present. A point of light. The businessman recoiled, startled by the unknown sensation. His breathing quickened, and he extended his hands forward, trying to understand what was happening. But the warmth moved away, and with it that luminous point vanished. "Wait!" he exclaimed, trying to locate his small guide. Only silence answered. Whoever had led him there had left without a trace beyond the phantom sensation in that region of his brain that Roderick had never used before. Confused and shaken, the businessman used his smartphone to request a rideshare car. When the driver arrived, he found Roderick still perplexed, trying to comprehend what he had experienced. "Everything all right, sir?" "You're soaked," the driver commented as he helped him into the vehicle. "Yes, I'm fine," Roderick replied distractedly. "Just take me home, please." During the ride to his apartment in Mayfair, Roderick repeatedly touched his own face as if searching for some physical change that would explain that experience. The sensation of the luminous point persisted in his memory, like a vivid dream that refused to fade after waking. Upon arriving home, he dismissed his housekeeper, Mrs. Zula, and locked himself in his study. With trembling hands, he made a call to Dr. Maurice Fontaine, his ophthalmologist for over 20 years. "I need to see you urgently," he said as soon as the doctor answered. "Something inexplicable has happened." The next day, Roderick was sitting in the examination room of the private clinic in Chelsea. Dr. Maurice, a middle-aged man with decades of experience in complex cases, listened attentively to his account. "And you say you saw a point of light. Are you sure it wasn't just a thermal sensation confused by the brain?" the doctor questioned, maintaining a professional tone despite his evident curiosity. "I've never felt anything like it, Maurice. It was beyond an impression. It was as if a door opened for an instant, after 42 years of being locked." The doctor performed a battery of tests, including a CT scan and an advanced electroencephalogram. When the preliminary results appeared on his computer screen, his expression transformed. "Roderick, there's activity in your optic nerve that we've never recorded before. It's minimal, almost imperceptible, but it's there." The businessman felt his heart race. "What does that mean?" "Honestly, I can't explain it. Your previous diagnoses always indicated complete optic nerve atrophy. It's as if something has awakened." Roderick hesitated before asking the question that had been pounding in his mind since the encounter in the park. "And is there any possible relation between this activation and the proximity of a flame? Of a candle, specifically?" The doctor paused, pondering. "There's no medical literature to support that, but we're talking about an absolutely atypical case. We'll run more tests, including—" Dr. Maurice opened a drawer and took out a small scented candle he kept in his office for moments of relaxation between consultations. He lit it with a lighter and carefully brought it close to Roderick's face. The businessman held his breath. Again, that tiny point of light appeared in his consciousness. This time, however, it lasted only a second, much fainter than the previous experience. "I managed to see something, but it was different, less intense," Roderick reported, his voice betraying a mix of excitement and disappointment. "Interesting," the doctor murmured. "Very interesting. And you said it was a child who lit the candle for you yesterday?" "A street child?" Roderick nodded, realizing how fantastical the whole story sounded. "I need to find that child, Maurice. I need to understand what happened." The doctor closed the digital medical record and looked seriously at his patient. "Roderick, as a scientist, I must warn you not to create unrealistic expectations. What we're seeing might just be a temporary anomaly, perhaps even a psychosomatic response, but as your longtime friend, I understand you need to investigate this. Just be careful with the hopes you place on this path." That night, lying in his king-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, Roderick couldn't sleep. Mental images he had never experienced before danced in his consciousness. They weren't real visions, but concepts of light and shadow that his brain was trying to process for the first time. Somewhere in the same city, under the same moon he couldn't see, was a silent child who, for unknown reasons, had opened a crack in the darkness of his life. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The next morning, Roderick called an emergency meeting in his apartment. The rain continued to fall over London, creating a sonic backdrop that the businessman had always appreciated. For him, rain had texture, it had melody. Now, he wondered if one day he might see its silvery contours descending through the windows. Rafael Mendoza, his head of security, and Cecilia, his assistant, listened attentively as he recounted what had happened. Rafael, an ex-policeman with 20 years of experience, maintained a serious demeanor, although Roderick could sense his skepticism in his tone of voice. "So we're looking for a street child who doesn't speak, likes candles, and apparently disappeared after taking you to a park in the rain," Raphael summarized, tapping his fingers on the mahogany table. "I know it sounds absurd," Roderick admitted, "but Dr. Maurice confirmed activity in my optic nerve that never existed before. Something is happening, and this child is the key." Cecilia, ever practical, already had her tablet in hand. "You mentioned you were near Regent Street when it all happened. They probably went to Regent's Park, it's the closest one. We can start by checking the surrounding security cameras, talking to regular visitors, park rangers, and also with the institutions that work with street children in the area, Roderick added. Travers Tech donates to several of them. Start with Hope House and the Renaissance Institute. Raphael still seemed reticent. Mr. Travers, with all due respect, London has thousands of vulnerable children. Finding a specific one who doesn't speak and left no clues is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Then hire more people to help with the search, Roderick replied firmly. Use company resources. Offer a reward for information if necessary. I want this child found, and I want it urgently. In the following weeks, a silent but intense operation unfolded through the streets of the English capital. Social workers, discreet security personnel, and even private detectives scoured shelters, squares, and communities. The search for a silent child who lit candles became almost an obsession for Roderick's team. Meanwhile, the businessman continued his routine of medical examinations. With each visit to Dr. Maurice's office, new batteries of tests, new specialists called in. Neurologists, neuroscientists, internationally renowned ophthalmologists. News of the mysterious activation in the optic nerve of a congenitally blind man began to circulate in medical circles, albeit under strict secrecy. The tests continue to show activity, Dr. Maurice explained during a consultation 30 days after the incident. In fact, there appears to be a slight increase in neural response when exposed to light. It's as if your brain is relearning to process visual stimuli. Roderick absorbed every word as if drinking a precious liquid. And what about the candles? Is there something special about them that could explain the phenomenon? We tested different light sources. LED, fluorescent, filtered natural light, candles of different compositions. Your response is slightly more intense with candlelight, especially pure beeswax candles. But the difference is statistically small. So it's not the candle itself, Roderick murmured, more to himself than to the doctor. It's something related to that child, to that specific moment. That afternoon, upon returning home, Roderick found Raphael waiting for him in the living room. There was something different in his voice, a note of contained excitement that the businessman rarely detected in the always reserved ex-policeman. We have a concrete lead, sir. A social worker from Hope House recognized the description. There's a girl in their shelter who never speaks, communicates only through gestures and drawings. And according to the staff, she has a fixation on lighting candles. Roderick's heart quickened. I want to meet her today. I've already arranged it. The shelter coordinator is expecting us at 5 in the afternoon. The girl's name is Lyra. She's approximately 9 years old. She was found wandering alone in the city center about 6 months ago. There are no previous records about her. 3 hours later, Roderick was sitting in a simple room at Hope House located in the Shoreditch neighborhood. The smell of home cooking and detergent permeated the air, mingled with the distant sound of children playing in the inner courtyard. Lyra is a very special child, explained Martha Saunders, the shelter coordinator, a robust woman with a serene voice. When she arrived here, she was malnourished and frightened. We tried every approach to make her speak, but she simply doesn't utter any sound. Doctors found no physical problem to explain her mutism. And what about the candles? Roderick asked, leaning slightly forward in his chair. Martha sighed. A fixation that started in her second month with us. A volunteer brought scented candles for a relaxation activity. Lyra was fascinated. Since then, whenever she can, she lights candles and observes the flame for long periods. We've had to establish rules to prevent accidents. Does she go out alone sometimes? Could she have been in the Regent Street area a few weeks ago? The coordinator hesitated. The children are always supervised, but there was an incident. Lyra disappeared for almost an entire day approximately a month ago. We found her returning to the shelter alone the next morning. We couldn't find out where she had been. A shiver ran down Roderick's spine. The dates matched. I'd like to meet her now, if possible, he requested, trying to contain the anxiety in his voice. Minutes later, the room door opened. Roderick heard light, hesitant footsteps. The soft scent of children's shampoo reached his nostrils. He felt the small presence that was now before him. Lyra, Martha called gently, this is Mr. Roderick. He would very much like to meet you. Silence. Roderick leaned in the girl's direction, carefully extending his hand. "Hello, Lyra. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." There was no response, only the soft sound of childish breathing. Then, to everyone's surprise in the room, a small hand took Roderick's. The touch was unmistakable, the same hand that had guided him through the rainy streets of London. "It's you," he whispered, emotion choking his voice. "You led me to the park that day." Martha looked confused. "You two already knew each other?" Before Roderick could explain, he felt the girl release his hand. There was a movement and then the familiar sound, a match being struck, the aroma of sulfur, followed by the characteristic smell of heated wax. "Lyra, no. Didn't we agree we'd only light candles during supervised activities?" Martha intervened, but Roderick raised his hand, asking for silence. The flame approached his face. And then, again, that extraordinary phenomenon. The point of light appeared in his consciousness, stronger and more defined than the first time. It wasn't just a point now. It seemed to pulsate, expanding slightly like a small star coming to life in the eternal darkness he inhabited. "I'm seeing," Roderick murmured, tears streaming down his face. "I'm seeing the light more clearly now." The flame moved away, and with it the vision was gone. But a certainty remained. It wasn't a hallucination, it wasn't a coincidence. There was an inexplicable connection between him and that silent child. Roderick wiped away his tears and turned in the direction where he knew Martha was. "I want to start the procedures to become Lyra's foster parent, and depending on how this evolves, perhaps consider adoption." "Mr. Travers," the coordinator replied cautiously, "I appreciate your interest, but there are strict protocols. Furthermore, Lyra is a child who requires special attention, with significant communication challenges and—" "Martha," Roderick interrupted gently, "I perfectly understand the procedures and I am willing to follow each one. As for the challenges, my entire life has been built on overcoming limitations that others considered insurmountable. I believe there is something special happening here, something that transcends conventional explanations." As they discussed the next steps, Roderick felt Lyra's small hand take his again. There were no words, but the connection was palpable, real, as if an invisible thread had been woven between them in that rainy park, uniting two lonely beings in their own forms of silence. Leaving the shelter that afternoon, Roderick made 2 calls. The first to Dr. Maurice, reporting the encounter and scheduling new examinations, this time with Lyra present. The second to his lawyer, instructing him to immediately initiate the legal procedures for foster care. "We'll need a multidisciplinary team," he explained to the doctor. "Psychologists, occupational therapists, alternative communication specialists. I want to create an environment that can benefit Lyra and at the same time explore this extraordinary connection." As the car glided through the streets of London, now bathed in the golden hues of a sunset he had never seen, Roderick felt simultaneously exhausted and electrified. An almost forgotten sensation began to blossom in his chest: hope. Upon arriving at his apartment, he asked Mrs. Zula to prepare the guest room. "We're going to have a very special visitor soon," he explained with a smile. "A girl named Lyra." "A child, sir?" asked the housekeeper, surprise evident in her voice. "Yes, Zula. A child who, for some reason I still don't understand, seems to have the power to bring light to my darkness." That night, for the first time in years, Roderick slept deeply, without the nightmares that used to torment him. In his dreams, candles danced in the wind, creating luminous patterns that even in his subconscious were the most beautiful thing he had ever imagined. The foster care process advanced with surprising speed. Roderick mobilized his influence and resources, but always within legal and ethical parameters. The family court judge, Dr. Claudia Mason, known for her rigor and commitment to child welfare, authorized supervised visits 3 times a week. "Mr. Travers, your visual condition would normally be a complicating factor for adopting a child with special needs," the magistrate explained during a preliminary hearing. "However, your resources and the support team you've organized make the case viable. Furthermore, there's something intriguing about the reported connection between you and Lyra." Visits began at Hope House, always accompanied by a psychologist and a social worker. Contrary to what many expected, communication between Roderick and Lyra flowed almost magically. He brought small gifts, not expensive toys or electronics, but sensory items, an antique music box, a handmade kaleidoscope, fabrics with different textures. On the third visit, Roderick brought a special set of handmade candles, made with colored waxes and essential oils. The shelter coordinator hesitated, citing safety rules, but the psychologist intervened. If we maintain proper supervision, this could be an important therapeutic tool, argued Dr. Teresa, the professional hired by Roderick to oversee the case. Lyra's fixation on candles seems to be a significant point of connection. In a room specially prepared for the activity, with all necessary precautions, Lyra lit a lavender candle. This time, when she brought the flame close to Roderick's face, something extraordinary happened. The point of light, which was previously just a tiny flicker, expanded. Roderick could distinguish, albeit vaguely, the outline of the flame, not just a point, but an elongated, dancing shape. "My God," he whispered, gripping the chair he was sitting in. "I'm seeing the shape. I'm seeing the flame moving." The psychologist, observing intently, made frenetic notes. "This is absolutely remarkable." "Roderick, can you describe exactly what you're visualizing?" "It's like an oval yellowish shape that moves subtly. It's blurry, undefined, but it definitely has an outline." Lyra, noticing Roderick's reaction, slowly moved the candle to the right and then to the left. To everyone's astonishment, Roderick's eyes followed the movement. "It moved. I saw the light shifting," he exclaimed, his face lit up with an almost childlike joy. That moment marked a turning point. The meetings between Roderick and Lyra became daily. The medical team, led by Dr. Maurice, meticulously documented every progress. Tests performed at St. Thomas's Hospital confirmed the inexplicable. Roderick's optic nerve showed increasing signs of activation, especially in the girl's presence. "I can't explain it scientifically," Dr. Maurice admitted during a meeting with other specialists. Roderick's congenital condition would make any visual recovery impossible. "Nevertheless, we are witnessing something that defies all known medical protocols." After 2 months of supervised visits, the judge authorized Lyra to spend weekends at Roderick's residence. The apartment in Mayfair had been adapted, a special room decorated in soft tones, with ergonomic furniture and carefully planned lighting, a reinforced security system, and a support team that included Mrs. Zula, now trained in alternative communication, a pediatric nurse, and the psychologist Dr. Teresa. On the first weekend Lyra spent at the apartment, Roderick noticed something no one else had. The girl wasn't completely mute by choice or trauma. She simply communicated differently. During the night, while they were on the balcony observing the illuminated city, or, in Roderick's case, feeling the breeze and hearing the urban sounds, Lyra began to tap her fingers on the metal railing. Roderick, with his hearing sharpened by decades of relying on it, recognized a pattern. It wasn't random. There was rhythm, there was intention. After a few repetitions, he realized it was Morse code. "Are you trying to say something using Morse code?" he asked, astonished. The fingers paused momentarily, then continued with more vigor as if confirming. "Where did you learn that?" he questioned, now completely fascinated. More tapping, more patterns. Roderick couldn't decipher everything, but he caught some letters, L-U-Z. The next morning he called in an alternative communication and Morse code specialist. It was confirmed. Lyra knew fragments of the code and was trying to use it to communicate. No one at the shelter had noticed, as the tapping was often interpreted as a stereotypy, a repetitive behavior without meaning. "We need to develop a system based on this," Roderick decided. A halfway point between traditional Morse code and something more accessible for her. In a few weeks, a new form of communication blossomed between them. Using adapted tablets and applications developed by Travers Tech programmers, Lyra began to express simple thoughts, needs, and even some feelings. Her first complete message was, "I like light." In parallel, Roderick's visual perception continued to evolve, not just with candles now. He began to distinguish larger shapes under intense light, differences between light and dark, movements of large objects close to his face. Doctors spoke of extraordinary neural plasticity and cross-stimulation of dormant brain areas. But the most intriguing phenomenon remained. His vision significantly improved in Lyra's presence. When the girl was at the shelter during the week, progress stagnated. When she returned for the weekends, Roderick's visual perception made qualitative leaps. It's as if she's a catalyst, Dr. Maurice theorized. As if her presence activated something in his neurological system that no medicine had been able to awaken in 4 decades. In the 3rd month of living together, the judge agreed to evaluate the possibility of definitive adoption. A multidisciplinary team was assigned to assess Lyra's adaptation to the new environment and the impact on her development. The results are surprisingly positive, concluded the responsible social worker. Alternative communication flourished. The girl demonstrates secure attachment. There is evidence of cognitive and emotional progress. And as for Mr. Travers, yes? The judge asked, adjusting her glasses. I've never seen such a profound transformation in an adult. It's as if Lyra's presence had humanized him in a way that none of his professional achievements could. During an especially significant afternoon, while they were in the building's internal garden, Lyra led Roderick to the small artificial pond. There, using her adapted tablet, she typed a message that made the businessman's heart almost stop. Are you my father now? Roderick felt tears burn his eyes. I would very much like to be, Lyra, if you accept me. I'm doing everything I can to make that happen legally. The answer came not through the tablet, but through a gesture, the girl's small hand seeking his, their fingers entwining as on the day they met. That night, after Lyra fell asleep in her new room, Roderick met with his team in his study. There was an important decision to be made. I want to expand this, he announced to Cecilia, Raphael and Dr. Maurice. What's happening between Lyra and me is extraordinary, but it cannot be an isolated case. I want to create an institute, a center that can welcome other children like her with special needs or deep traumas. A therapeutic center? Cecilia asked, already taking notes. More than that, a place that combines conventional therapies and alternative approaches, that explores improbable connections like ours. I want to bring together scientists, doctors, educators, artists, people willing to look beyond established protocols. The idea quickly took shape. Roderick already owned a large plot of land in Surrey, in Greater London, originally acquired for a future Travers Tech Research Centre. Instead, it would be home to the Travers Lyra Institute for Special Children. Over the following months, as the Institute's project progressed, the connection between Roderick and Lyra grew in depth and complexity. The businessman's visual perception continued to improve. He could now distinguish silhouettes, recognize large objects, perceive differences in luminosity in environments. Doctors spoke of a scientific miracle and an unprecedented case in medical literature. The adoption was finally approved in an emotional ceremony at the courthouse. Judge Claudia, normally stern and reserved, allowed herself a smile as she handed over the official documents. What we are witnessing here goes beyond legal or medical parameters, she declared. There is a rare harmony between the two of you, something that transcends conventional explanations. Lyra Travers, welcome to your new family. The girl, now in colorful clothes chosen with Mrs. Zula's help, pressed the controls of her advanced tablet, and a synthesized voice uttered words that moved everyone in the room. Thank you for finding me in the dark. As they left the courthouse, father and daughter hand in hand, neither could have imagined the challenges and revelations that were yet to come. The bond forged between a man who had never seen the world and a child who had never spoken to him would be tested in ways no one could predict. In her new room that night, Lyra lit a special candle, blue her favorite, with a vanilla scent. When she brought the flame close to Roderick's face, something unprecedented happened. He not only saw the light, but also, albeit blurred and partial, the outline of the small face that had become the center of his existence. Lyra, he whispered, gently touching his daughter's features with his fingertips. I'm starting to see you. The Travers Lyra Institute opened its doors on a sunny spring morning, 8 months after Roderick's first meeting with the girl. The complex in Surrey, surrounded by preserved woodland, impressed with architecture that harmonized functionality and beauty. Large windows allowed generous natural light. Sensory gardens stimulated different perceptions, and cutting-edge technology coexisted with welcoming spaces of organic design. It's even more beautiful than I imagined, commented Dr. Teresa, now the Institute's clinical director, as she walked beside Roderick through the main wing. And to think it all started with a casual encounter in the rain. Roderick smiled. His appearance had changed in recent months. He had abandoned the austere demeanor and formal clothes that were once his trademark. Now he wore lighter, colorful clothes, colors he was gradually beginning to distinguish. His eyes, previously always hidden behind dark glasses, were now more frequently exposed, revealing a new vitality. It wasn't casual, Teresa. I increasingly believe there was something predestined in that encounter. The Institute was not just a therapeutic center, but a true laboratory of possibilities. It welcomed children with different conditions: autism, profound emotional traumas, sensory deficiencies, rare syndromes. The multidisciplinary approach combined conventional therapies with experimental methods, always based on rigorous scientific monitoring. At the heart of the project was Lyra's special room, a studio equipped with various types of lighting, projectors, motion-sensitive musical instruments, and an impressive variety of handmade candles. There the girl developed what specialists began to call luminous therapy. Initially created to continue stimulating Roderick's visual recovery, the technique proved surprisingly effective with other children. Lyra, still without uttering words, guided participants in sensory experiences that combined light, sound, and movement. Using her advanced tablet, she programmed sequences of lights and sounds that seemed to awaken dormant neural connections in her young patients. "It's extraordinary," commented Dr. Morris, observing through the mirrored glass as Lyra conducted a session with Michael, a 7-year-old boy with severe autism who rarely made eye contact. "Look how he's responding to the sequence of lights. There's real engagement there." Roderick, standing beside the doctor, smiled proudly. "She has a natural gift. She found her own language to communicate with the world." His own condition continued to evolve in ways that defied medical explanations. After 9 months of living with Lyra, Roderick had achieved approximately 40% functional vision. He could distinguish shapes, recognize close faces, identify larger objects, perceive some colors, especially shades of blue and yellow. The medical team documenting the case had published preliminary articles in renowned scientific journals, generating intense debate in the international medical community. The fascinating thing is that your improvement remains directly linked to Lyra's presence, Dr. Maurice observed. When you are separated for more than 24 hours, visual acuity significantly decreases. It's as if she's a kind of neural catalyst. Theories about the phenomenon multiplied. Some scientists spoke of bioelectromagnetic fields, others of brainwave synchronization. Some even ventured hypotheses about chemical communication through yet unidentified pheromones. The truth is, no one could fully explain it. What they could not deny were the results. In addition to Roderick's evolution, the children treated at the Institute showed remarkable progress. Michael, the boy with autism, began to establish consistent eye contact after just 3 weeks of therapy with Lyra. Juliana, a teenager who had stopped speaking after a trauma, gradually resumed verbal communication. Peter, a boy with a rare syndrome affecting his motor development, demonstrated better coordination after sessions of luminous stimulation. On a particularly significant afternoon, while observing Lyra work with a new patient, Roderick noticed something he had never seen before. The girl moved her hands in a specific way, creating patterns in the projected light that resembled a language. It wasn't Morse code nor conventional signs, but something of her own, unique. "Teresa, are you seeing this?" he asked the psychologist accompanying him. "The hand movements?" "Yes, she does that frequently during sessions. They're not random movements. There's a repetitive pattern, an intentional sequence." Fascinated by the discovery, Roderick decided to document and analyze the patterns. Over the following weeks, high-precision cameras recorded each therapeutic session. A team of linguists and non-verbal communication specialists was called in to study the material. "It's definitely a communication system," confirmed Dr. Marina Fontaine, a linguist from the University of London. "It doesn't fit any known sign language pattern, but it has structure, consistency, and apparently specific meanings associated with different movements." The discovery elevated the Institute's work to a new level. Now, in addition to sensory therapies, there was a concentrated effort to document and understand what was named Lyra's luminous language. The girl, who gradually accepted to share more of her system with the researchers, seemed to flourish with the recognition of her creation. Using her tablet, she explained that she had spoken with light since she was little. The patterns she created with her hands were like words and phrases, a way to express concepts she couldn't verbalize. Through this system, she communicated complex emotions, abstract ideas, sensations that transcended conventional vocabulary. The 10th month brought a significant milestone. Roderick managed, for the first time, to see Lyra's face with enough clarity to distinguish her expressions. It happened during a private session, when the girl was experimenting with a new combination of colored lights. "Your smile," he murmured, tears streaming down his face. "I can see your smile, Lyra." The girl, emotional, approached and touched her adoptive father's face. Then, to the absolute astonishment of both, a sound escaped her lips. Not a formed word, but a clear, intentional vocal sound, laden with emotion. "You made a sound?" Roderick exclaimed, hugging her. That small sound marked the beginning of another extraordinary process. With the help of specialized speech therapists, Lyra began to explore her voice. First with isolated vowels, then simple combinations, eventually syllables, and finally short words. Her first spoken word months later would be light. The Institute became an international reference center. Doctors, scientists, and therapists from various countries visited Surrey to learn about the methods developed there. Lyra's luminous therapy began to be adapted and implemented in other centers, always with promising results, though never as extraordinary as the originals. With increasing visibility, questions also arose. Some skeptics in the medical community pointed to the lack of conventional scientific explanation for the results. Others suggested there might be elements of suggestion or a placebo effect. Some even raised suspicions about the veracity of the accounts. To answer the doubts, Roderick opened the Institute for Independent Verification. An international team of specialists spent 3 months accompanying and documenting all procedures, conducting controlled tests, and interviewing patients and families. The final report, while cautious in its theoretical conclusions, confirmed the efficacy of the methods and the authenticity of the results. "We cannot fully explain the mechanism of action," the document concluded, "but the therapeutic benefits are unequivocal and measurable." Success, however, also brought new challenges. The demand for places at the Institute grew exponentially, far beyond its capacity. Roderick faced the ethical dilemma of how to expand without compromising quality or altering the personalized approach that was the core of the project. In parallel, he worried about Lyra's increasing exposure. The girl, now 10 years old, was becoming a public figure, a target of curiosity and occasionally sensationalist speculation. How to protect her while allowing her gift to continue benefiting others? The solution came from Lyra herself. Using her increasingly sophisticated communication system, a combination of tablet, vocal sounds, and her luminous language, she proposed a model of multiplication, training facilitators who could learn her methods and apply them in other contexts. She would be the mentor of a training program, no longer the sole practitioner of the therapy. The Seeds of Light project, as it was named, selected young therapists and educators with special sensitivity to work with vulnerable children. During 3 intensive months, these professionals learned not only the techniques developed by Lyra, but also the underlying philosophy, the understanding of light as language, as connection, as a catalyst for dormant potentials. On the Institute's first anniversary, a special celebration brought together the first 30 children treated and their families. The highlight was an unprecedented presentation. Lyra, accompanied by some of her young patients, conducted a luminous symphony, a choreography of lights, movements, and sounds that told the Institute's story. For Roderick, now with approximately 50% functional vision, it was a transcendent experience. Sitting in the front row, he could see the spectacle with enough clarity to appreciate the beauty of what his daughter had created. "She transformed her own limitation into a gift," he commented to Dr. Morris, sitting beside him. "And she taught me to do the same." The doctor nodded, moved. "The two of you redefined what we consider possible in medicine and neurological recovery." After the celebration, late at night, Roderick and Lyra sat on the balcony of the house built for them within the Institute's complex. Under the starry sky he was beginning to distinguish, father and daughter conversed using their own unique combination of spoken words, luminous signs, and digital communication. "Happy?" he asked, using the word she had recently learned to pronounce. Lyra smiled and made an affirmative head movement. Then she took her tablet and wrote a message that made Roderick's heart race. "I want to meet my first family someday." The businessman felt a tightness in his chest. It was a possibility that had always been present, but which they had never openly discussed. Lyra's records in the child protection system were scarce. She had been found wandering alone without documentation, without clues about her origin. Do you remember them?" he asked carefully. The girl made an ambiguous gesture with her hands, a movement from her luminous language that indicated something between yes and no, a concept that could be translated as presence in absence. Roderick took a deep breath. "I promise we will look when the time is right. If they exist, if they can be found, we will look for them." Lyra smiled and rested her head on her adoptive father's shoulder. Both stayed there contemplating the stars, he with his partially recovered vision, she with her partially broken silence. Two incomplete people who together formed something greater than the sum of their parts. What neither of them could have imagined that starry night was that the answer about Lyra's origins was closer than they suspected, and that the next phase of their journey would bring revelations that would forever change the understanding of the extraordinary connection they shared. The report in the Spectator magazine caught the attention of all of the United Kingdom. Titled "The Miracle of Light, the Girl Who Cured the Blind Businessman," the 6-page article detailed the extraordinary story of Roderick and Lyra Travers. Photographs showed the Institute complex, the innovative therapeutic methods, and, with limited permission, images of Roderick himself wearing special glasses developed for his evolving visual condition. One specific photograph, however, would change the course of history. In the corner of the page, almost like a visual footnote, there was an image of Lyra in profile, concentrated during a therapeutic session, manipulating patterns of light with her small hands. In a small apartment in the Covent Garden area of London, a woman of approximately 30 years old dropped her teacup as she flipped through the magazine. Porcelain shards scattered across the floor, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the photograph, her hands trembling. "It can't be," whispered Victoria Light, touching the girl's printed face as if she could feel her skin through the paper. "It can't be." Victoria lived a discreet, almost reclusive existence. In her apartment, partially converted into a studio, she produced handmade candles that she sold at fairs and specialty natural product stores. Artisan Luminaries was the name of her small venture, a veiled tribute to the surname she carried and to the daughter she believed she had lost 5 years earlier. Neighbors described her as reserved, kind yet distant. Few knew of her past as a promising visual artist, of the exhibitions she held in renowned galleries, of the international recognition she was beginning to achieve. Even fewer knew of the tragedy that pulled her away from that life, the emotional collapse after the disappearance of her daughter. Clarice, then just 5 years old, the official story, recorded in police reports and social records, indicated that the girl had disappeared during an arts festival in Hyde Park. Victoria, at the time undergoing treatment for depression and facing financial difficulties, was initially suspected of negligence. Investigations concluded that the child had likely gotten lost in the crowd and been taken by others. After months of fruitless searches, the case went cold, becoming just another statistic in the painful archive of missing children. For Victoria, the trauma resulted in a severe emotional collapse. Hospitalized for almost a year in a psychiatric clinic, she lost contact with her artistic circle, with friends, with distant family. Upon discharge, she was a shadow of the vibrant woman she had been. She found a form of therapy in making handmade candles. She molded the wax, created colors and aromas, lit small lights as if in a private ritual of hope. Now, staring fixedly at the photograph in the magazine, she felt her world turn upside down again. The girl's eyes, the contour of her face, the way she held her hands, everything brought back Clarice. Even the fascination with light, described in the article as a striking characteristic of Lyra, connected to her daughter, who since babyhood had shown an unusual fixation on light sources. With trembling hands, Victoria rummaged through an old box stored under her bed. Among yellowed photographs and old documents, she found the album she hadn't opened in years. There it was, Clarice at 4 years old, smiling at the camera, holding a small flashlight. The resemblance to the girl in the magazine was undeniable. In the following days, Victoria plunged into an obsessive investigation. She researched everything about the Travers Lyra Institute, about Roderick Travers, about the mysterious girl who had appeared in her life. The publicly available information confirmed aspects that increased her suspicions. The approximate age matched. The period when Lyra had been found wandering alone corresponded to Clarice's disappearance. Even the girl's initial mutism could be explained by the trauma of separation. After a week of alternating hesitation, anguish and hope, Victoria made a decision. She wrote a detailed letter explaining her story and her suspicions, attaching copies of photographs of Clarice, the police report of the disappearance, and her identification document. She sent the package to the Travers Lyra Institute with the indication "confidential" for Roderick Travers personally. At the Institute, the letter caused immediate commotion. Roderick, now able to read printed documents in an enlarged font thanks to his partially recovered vision, personally examined the photographs with the help of special lenses. "The resemblance is undeniable," he admitted to Cecilia and Dr. Maurice, who were with him in his office. "The same eyes, the same face shape, even the small mole near the right eyebrow. What do you intend to do?" Cecilia asked, concerned about the legal and emotional implications of that revelation. Roderick took a deep breath. In his heart, he already knew the answer. "We will verify properly, with all scientific guarantees. And if it is confirmed that Lyra is really Clarice, we need to do what's right." A discreet investigation was initiated. Rafael Mendoza, the head of security, coordinated a team that verified the authenticity of the documents and the veracity of Victoria Light's story. In parallel, with the utmost delicacy and respecting rigorous ethical protocols, DNA samples were collected from both Lyra and Victoria for comparison. "We need to prepare Lyra for this possibility," Dr. Teresa instructed. "Regardless of the outcome, it's information that can cause great emotional impact." During the weeks of waiting for the results, Roderick faced his own inner turmoil. He loved Lyra as a daughter, had built a connection with her that transcended rational explanations. The possibility of losing her to her biological family was terrifying. At the same time, as someone who valued truth and ethics, he knew he could not deny the girl the right to know her origins. One night, as they observed the stars on their usual balcony, Roderick decided to broach the subject with Lyra. "Do you remember when you told me you'd like to meet your original family, if it were possible?" he asked gently. Lyra, now more communicative thanks to intensive speech therapy, nodded. "Yes," she replied with her still hesitant voice. "Well, there's a possibility. A real possibility that we've found someone who might be your biological mother." The girl's eyes widened. She quickly picked up her tablet and typed, "Who is she? How did she find me?" Roderick explained carefully, showing Victoria's letter, some of Clarice's old photographs, always attentively observing his daughter's reactions. "These photos, they look like me," Lyra commented verbally, her diction improving each week. "Yes, the resemblance is striking," Roderick agreed. "We're doing tests to confirm, but I want you to know, regardless of the outcome, nothing will change between us. You will always be my daughter, Lyra, always." The girl remained silent for several minutes, processing the information. Then, to Roderick's surprise, she did something unexpected. She lit one of the special candles they always kept nearby and moved it in complex patterns, her luminous language expressing emotions that words couldn't yet capture. "What are you saying?" he asked, trying to interpret the message. Lyra picked up the tablet again. "I'm saying I have room for two families in my heart, just as I have room for two forms of communication." The DNA test results arrived 2 weeks later, confirming what the evidence already suggested. Lyra Travers and Clarice Light were the same person. The genetic compatibility with Victoria was unequivocal. They were mother and daughter. The next step was inevitable and at the same time daunting. Roderick invited Victoria for a meeting at the Institute, accompanied by lawyers from both sides and the psychological team. The meeting was prepared with extreme care, considering the emotional impact on everyone involved. When Victoria entered the meeting room, her eyes immediately sought Roderick. He, with his vision now sufficient to distinguish features at close range, noticed how fragile and nervous she appeared. A slender woman, of medium height, dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, intense eyes that resembled Lyra's. "Mr. Travers," she began, her voice trembling. "First of all, I want to thank you for not dismissing my letter, for taking my suspicions seriously." "It was the least I could do, Miss Light," he replied gently, "and please call me Roderick." The initial conversation was tense, permeated by contained emotions and difficult questions. How had Clarice disappeared? How had she ended up on the streets? Why had she never recovered her speech after being found? The lawyers and psychologists mediated the dialogue, ensuring that the focus remained on the child's well-being. "The most important thing now," Dr. Teresa emphasized, "is to consider how to present this information to Lyra, or Clarice, and how to conduct the reconnection process in a healthy way." Victoria, who had arrived fearing a legal battle, found Roderick's stance surprisingly open. "I don't want to separate the girl from her biological mother," he declared sincerely. "That would be cruel and unfair to both of them. What I propose is that we work together to build an arrangement that allows her to benefit from both families in her life." Silent tears streamed down Victoria's face. I feared that you, with all your power and influence—" "My only interest is her well-being," Roderick interrupted softly, "and I believe that having you in her life will be fundamental for that." At the end of that long meeting, it was agreed that the first meeting between mother and daughter would take place the following week, in a controlled environment, with psychological support. Until then, Lyra would be carefully prepared for the moment. The news that her biological mother had been found and confirmed affected Lyra in complex ways. There was excitement, confusion, some nights of intense nightmares. In sessions with Dr. Teresa, she expressed profound questions. Why couldn't I speak after I got lost? Why don't I clearly remember her? Will she still love me after so long? The big day arrived amidst an almost palpable expectation. The meeting was scheduled for a special room at the Institute, a welcoming environment, with soft lighting familiar to Lyra. Roderick would be present initially, then would give space for mother and daughter to have private moments, always with Dr. Teresa nearby. Victoria arrived half an hour early, visibly nervous. She carried a small box decorated with colorful motifs, a gift for Clarice. Lyra, she explained hesitantly. When Lyra entered the room holding Roderick's hand, time seemed to freeze. Mother and daughter looked at each other fixedly, as if trying to absorb every detail of the other. Victoria brought a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. "Hello," Lyra said, her voice small but firm. "Hello, my little one," Victoria replied, tears streaming freely down her face. "You've grown so much." Slowly, as if fearing a sudden movement might break the enchantment of the moment, Victoria approached. She knelt to be at Lyra's height and extended the colorful box to her. "I brought something that was yours, something you adored." Carefully, Lyra opened the present. Inside was a small handmade flashlight, made of colorful materials with small holes in patterns that, when lit, projected shapes onto the walls. "You called it your portable star," Victoria explained. "We made it together when you were 4 years old." Something flickered in Lyra's eyes, a distant recognition, a submerged memory emerging to the surface. Her small hands held the flashlight with familiarity, as if her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. And then, to the astonishment of everyone in the room, the girl uttered a word she had never said since being found. "Mummy." The following 6 months brought challenges and discoveries no one could have predicted. The reunion between Lyra, now known by her birth name Clarice, though she responded to both, and her biological mother Victoria opened doors to submerged memories and dormant connections. Initial visits, always supervised by Dr. Teresa, gradually evolved into longer and more informal encounters. Roderick, demonstrating a generosity that surprised even his closest collaborators, insisted that Victoria should have unrestricted access to her daughter, provided she respected the girl's routine and emotional well-being. "It's not a competition," he explained during an interview with BBC One that documented the extraordinary case. "It's about providing Clarice, our Lyra, with all the emotional connections that can enrich her life. She doesn't have to choose between us. Victoria, in turn, demonstrated equal maturity. Instead of seeking exclusive custody, as many expected, she proposed a co-parenting arrangement that allowed her daughter to maintain her life at the institute, her therapeutic work, and her bond with Roderick, while gradually rebuilding the relationship with her biological mother. "My daughter built something extraordinary here," she declared in an official statement. "It would be selfish of me to pull Clarice from this environment, where she not only recovered, but also flourishes by helping other children." The agreement was formalized before the same judge who had approved the original adoption. Dr. Claudia Mason, known for her rigor, expressed admiration for the solution found. "In 20 years at the family court, I have never seen an arrangement so genuinely centered on the child's well-being, and not on the interests or ego of the adults." In parallel with the family reconstruction, another surprising development occurred. Lyra Clarice's reconnection with her childhood memories triggered a therapeutic process that further accelerated her speech recovery. Within 4 months after the reunion, her verbal communication had become almost fluent, although she maintained a predilection for her luminous language to express more complex or emotional concepts. "It's as if Victoria's presence unlocked something fundamental," Dr. Teresa observed in her clinical notes. "The recovery of her original identity seems to have created a neurological bridge that facilitates access to dormant linguistic abilities." Even more extraordinary was the effect on Roderick's vision. Against all medical expectations, his visual acuity continued to improve even after Victoria's introduction into the family equation. Dr. Maurice, who meticulously documented each advance, put forward a fascinating theory. The initial hypothesis was that the special connection between Roderick and Lyra created a unique phenomenon of neural stimulation. We expected that the entry of a third person might dilute this connection. What we observed was the opposite. Victoria's integration seems to have amplified the effect, perhaps because Lyra herself is neurologically and emotionally more integrated, more complete. In the 5th month after the reunion, during a routine examination, the medical team recorded another notable milestone. Roderick had achieved 65% functional visual capacity, surpassing all previous predictions. Victoria, who had gradually resumed her artistic career, now integrated into the Institute's team. Her experience with wax and light manipulation, developed over years in producing handmade candles, proved perfectly complementary to the luminous therapy created by her daughter. Together, mother and daughter began to develop artistic therapeutic installations that combined Lyra Clarice's natural intuition with Victoria's technical and aesthetic knowledge. "It's as if destiny had drawn a perfect circle," Roderick commented, observing mother and daughter working together in the special studio. Victoria lost Clarice at the peak of her artistic career. During their period of separation, each developed unique skills with light. Victoria through candles, Clarice through her intuitive therapy. Now reunited, these abilities merge into something transcendent. The new method, christened integrative luminotherapy, further expanded the scope and effectiveness of the treatments offered at the Institute. Combining elements of traditional art therapy, neuroscience knowledge, artisanal manufacturing techniques, and Lyra Clarice's intuitive approach, the program now attracted international interest, with waiting lists extending for months. On a special Sunday, as the Institute celebrated its 2nd anniversary, an extraordinary celebration was organized. The event brought together not only the families of the children attended, but also scientists, doctors, educators, artists, and authorities who had been involved with the project over the years. The highlight would be an unprecedented presentation, Symphony of Light, an immersive installation created jointly by Lyra, Clarice, and Victoria, with contributions from several of the Institute's patients. Roderick, now able to appreciate complex visual compositions thanks to his recovered vision, had followed the rehearsals, but insisted on experiencing the final version like any other spectator. As dusk fell, guests were led to a special pavilion built in the Institute's gardens. The entirely darkened space contained only comfortable seats arranged in a circle, and, at its center, a complex arrangement of handmade candles, discrete projectors and modified musical instruments. When everyone was seated, Victoria appeared in the center, wearing a simple outfit in deep blue tones. "Good evening and welcome," she began, her serene voice filling the space. "What we will share today is not just a spectacle, but an experience of connection, a journey through light, sound, and movement that tells a story, our collective story of loss, reunion, and healing." The lights dimmed to complete darkness. An absolute silence hung for a few seconds. Then a single point of light appeared in the center, a small candle lit by Lyra Clarice, now visible under the minimalist spotlight. What followed in the next 40 minutes transcended all expectations. The girl conducted a hypnotic choreography of lights and shadows, combining her original luminous language with elements created specifically for the occasion. Victoria complemented her daughter's movements with precise interventions, lighting new candles, adjusting projections, subtly modifying the chromatic temperature of the environment. Gradually, other children from the Institute joined the performance, each bringing their own luminous element: handmade lanterns, small LEDs embedded in fantastical costumes, light wands that drew shapes in space. An original musical composition, developed by the Institute's music therapists, served as a soundtrack, responding organically to the movements and luminous patterns. The visual narrative was clear even without words. It began with a single point of light in the darkness, representing Lyra Clarice alone, expanded with the encounter with Roderick, multiplied with the creation of the Institute, underwent a chromatic transformation with the reunion with Victoria, and culminated in a harmonious explosion of colors and shapes when all the children gathered in the center. For Roderick, sitting in the front row, the experience was overwhelming. Not only because he could see with enough clarity to appreciate the visual beauty of the presentation, but because each element resonated deeply with his personal journey. The transformation of darkness into light, of isolation into connection, of limitation into possibility. It was his story, Lyra Clarice's story, the story of every child present. In the final moment, when all the lights went out except for a single central candle, tears streamed freely down his face. The solitary flame gradually enlarged, revealing Lyra Clarice holding it, looking directly at him with a luminous smile. "For my father Roderick," she said, her clear and firm voice filling the reverent silence, "who found me when we were both lost in the darkness." Victoria joined her daughter, lighting her own candle from the girl's flame. And for all who had the courage to seek light, even when it seemed impossible. One by one, all the children lit their candles, creating a growing circle of small lights that expanded through the pavilion. The spectators spontaneously rose, many moved to tears. When the circle of light reached Roderick in the front row, Lyra Clarice approached and extended a special candle to him, cobalt blue, her favorite color, since she had begun to distinguish the chromatic spectrum. "Light your own light, Father," she invited. With slightly trembling hands, Roderick brought his wick to the flame of his daughter's candle. The fire transferred, creating a new source of light that he held with reverence. "Can you see all of us now?" Lyra Clarice asked, looking at him with intensity. "Yes," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. "I see each one of you, and it is the most beautiful sight I could imagine." In that moment, with hundreds of small flames illuminating smiling faces and tear-filled eyes, everyone understood the true miracle they had witnessed in recent years. It was not just the partial recovery of vision for a man who had lived 4 decades in darkness, nor the transformation of a traumatized child into an exceptional intuitive therapist. It was something much deeper and more universal: the human capacity to transcend limitations through genuine connection. In the weeks following the event, the Travers Lyra Light Institute, as it came to be called after Victoria's official integration, received unprecedented international recognition. Scientific publications, documentaries, invitations to conferences at prestigious universities, the global attention allowed the method developed there to expand to other centers around the world. Meanwhile, the peculiar family forged its own path of integration. Victoria moved to a house on the outskirts of the Institute, allowing daily contact with her daughter, while maintaining space for her artistic work and personal life. Roderick and she developed a friendship, based on mutual respect and shared love for Lyra Clarice. The girl, in turn, flourished in the complementary presence of both Roderick's entrepreneurial intuition and systemic thinking, Victoria's artistic sensibility and deep emotional connection. On a quiet afternoon, 6 months after the Symphony of Light presentation, the three were gathered in Victoria's garden. As they enjoyed a snack prepared by the artist, Lyra Clarice surprised them with a question. "Do you believe our meeting was coincidence or destiny?" Roderick and Victoria exchanged glances, each pondering the question's complexity. "I think some connections transcend simple explanations," Roderick finally replied. "Science can measure the effects, my recovered vision, your speech returning, but it doesn't fully explain the why." Victoria nodded, idly playing with a small candle on the table. "In art, we talk a lot about synchronicity, moments when seemingly disconnected events converge to create something greater than their individual parts. Like the lights in our presentation," Lyra Clarice commented, smiling. "Exactly," her mother agreed. "Each light alone is just a point. Together in harmonious movement, they tell a story." Roderick, observing mother and daughter with his recovered vision, felt a deep gratitude. He remembered walking alone, disoriented, through the rainy streets of London, never imagining that that moment of vulnerability would lead him to this improbable family, to this new way of seeing the world. Perhaps the true miracle, he reflected, isn't to recover physical sight, but to learn to see beyond the visible. Lyra Clarice smiled, lighting the small candle on the table with a gesture that now seemed as natural as breathing. The flame danced softly, reflecting in the eyes of the three, eyes that had known darkness in different forms and that now together celebrated the light they had found in each other. "Did you know I can see the colors of your feelings when you're together?" the girl revealed, moving her hands in luminous patterns that had become her signature. "They're like waves that meet and create new forms." Victoria and Roderick laughed, accustomed to their daughter's poetic and often enigmatic declarations. "And what color is this moment?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Lyra Clarice closed her eyes for an instant, as if searching for the answer somewhere deep within herself. When she opened them again, they were radiant. "It's not a color that exists in nature," she replied. "It's the color that exists when all other colors meet in perfect harmony." As the sun set on the London horizon, bathing the garden in golden hues, the small family remained in contemplative silence. A gentle breeze made the candle flame dance, casting shadows on their smiling faces. Three people who had found, each in their own way, a new meaning for the word vision. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Roderick, Lyra, and Victoria has brightened your day as much as it brightened ours in sharing it. This narrative reminds us that sometimes the most improbable encounters can transform our lives in ways we would never imagine. If this journey touched your heart, we have a special playlist with other equally moving stories that explore human connections in their deepest forms. Find it by clicking here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like so we can continue bringing stories that inspire, move, and make us believe in the transformative power of the bonds we create. And you? Have you ever experienced an encounter that completely changed the course of your life? Tell us in the comments. Your story can also be a light for someone.